Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Real pleasure for me as the moderator to welcome you to the second day of the SDG Fair. This is really a unique way and a unique opportunity to connect the aspirations that countries have in terms of attainment of the SDGs, the focus on recovery after the pandemic with concrete proposals and ideas with investors. And this is the second day of the SDG Fair. Yesterday, we had such a session with Kenya and Jamaica. Today, we'll have the opportunity to listen to Ghana and Pakistan. We'll have an opportunity to hear from investors about these proposals. And it's also an opportunity for other countries, of course, to listen and participate in this discussion. So I want to encourage particularly everybody who is here to use the chat function, the Q&A function in WebEx. You can post your question as the discussion goes, and that will make it both a live discussion, but really for the collective benefit of all, because this really is an important, new and innovative way in which we are trying to connect countries with investors and to try and get concrete support for countries in terms of their investment programs. In the case of Pakistan, we have a video message that we will begin with. So maybe we could go to that from His Excellency, the Foreign Minister, Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi. So maybe if we could begin that video message, please.
Respected representatives from private, business and investment sectors, members of the GIST Alliance, representatives from multilateral and bilateral development partners, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to open the Pakistan country presentation today at this virtual SDGs Investment Fair. The onset of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 has posed unprecedented socio-economic and health-related challenges to the international community. In Pakistan, we implemented a successful policy of smart lockdowns to contain the spread of the virus and to keep the economy afloat. Our post-COVID-19 response, recovery, and resilience solutions to achieve progress towards sustainable development goals remain the top national priorities. Ladies and gentlemen, economic diplomacy is at the core of our foreign policy. The vision of transformed Pakistan is centered around economic security. Our main emphasis has shifted from geopolitics to geoeconomics. With over 220 million people, Pakistan offers its investors a large consumer market with an expanding middle class. With its pivotal geoeconomic location, regional connectivity, and a large segment of skilled, vibrant, and youthful population, Pakistan is an emerging market with great opportunities to invest and to bring maximum dividends for its valued investors. The private sector has a fundamental role to play if the world is to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The 2030 Agenda and the SDGs needs to become the global framework for private sectors to capture the benefits and trade-offs of sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, the government of Pakistan is desirous of enhancing foreign direct investment in our growing economy. We seek technology transfer and want to be part of the global supply chains. Southern Pakistan's Comparative advantages are in agriculture-based value addition, information technologies, textiles, and labor-oriented services. Pakistan's continued impressive progress on the ease of doing business rankings reflects the growing confidence of investors and businesses in the government's policies. In the end, I congratulate UNDISA for organizing the SDG Investment Fair and extend my sincere appreciation to the UNDP for its collaboration with the Government of Pakistan for today's session. We see this platform as a unique opportunity for showcasing Pakistan's business potential and for generating future partnership in pursuit of our sustainable development goals. We remain committed to facilitating our international business and development partners to strengthen and deepen their economic and development investments in Pakistan. I thank you.
Without further ado, let me turn to the panelists who will make the presentation. For Pakistan, Madam Farina Mazhar, Secretary, Pakistan Investment, and the UNDP Senior Advisor, Financing for Development, and former Pakistan State Minister of Investment, Harun Sharif. So please go ahead, make your presentation.
If somebody could upload the presentation, I'll take the first part. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I would like to welcome all the participants to this timely and strategic event where countries can have a dialogue with international investors to work together for investment deals which can help sustainable development. So I'm delighted to be part of it, particularly grateful to UNDESA, UNDP, other participants, and GISD Alliance. Very quickly, so I will take just 5 minutes to put the things in perspective to set the stage so that you understand where Pakistan comes from. So next slide, please. So Pakistan currently, we had a macroeconomic issue and went to IMF. The stability indicators have improved and Pakistan has achieved stability. And the country is aiming for the post-COVID-19 economic recovery. As our foreign minister said, Pakistan dealt with the COVID pandemic quite well. However, the shock in terms of economic losses is there, as we see in the global economies. If we look at Pakistan, Pakistan basically is approaching towards a large middle class, upper middle class country. The poverty head count had moved down. If we look at the last numbers done in 2015-16, and as mentioned by the foreign minister, Pakistan has been among the top 10 best performers in the World Bank's ease of doing business indicators last year. Similarly, if we look at the SDG linked investments, so Standard Chartered Bank recently gauged only one infrastructure sector, near $100 billion worth of opportunity in Pakistan. What I would like to say, 2 points on this slide, and then I move on, that Pakistan, there's a very large young labor force coming into the market. So we need to increase gradually our investment to GDP ratio to our peer countries to 25%. Currently, it's at 15%. Now, because of COVID, it has created joblessness, and unfortunately, almost 50 million people are likely to go under the poverty line. And that's the challenge where I present this case to the investors to partner with us, and let's deal it together. Next slide, please. There are some numbers. I will not go in all the numbers as I've already elaborated, but there are some things which I would like to highlight. In the recovery phase, Pakistan's GDP growth is estimated this year around 2%, but it's likely to rise in the coming years. But where the gap is that because of the pressure on businesses, our tax collection will not be up to the mark. and because of fiscal pressures, the development expenditure is much lower, is 3.2% of GDP. Now that is the gap where Pakistan wants to attract international investors. And on the upper right hand corner, these are the sectors attracting most of foreign direct investment. Power sector tops it, followed by communication and IT, and then oil and gas sectors. So this is where Pakistan stands. Next slide, please. Now, this is an important slide for investment purpose and for development purpose. It's a country of over 210 million population. And out of that, almost 68% are below the age of 29. And that's a computer literate labor force entering in the market and offers a phenomenal opportunity to investors as well as the development organizations. If we see, we have over 180 million mobile subscribers, almost 100 million internet connections. So that puts this market uniquely in terms of a lucrative opportunity to look at the sectors and reaching out to smaller areas where others have. Next slide, please. Now, this is some of the macro numbers. Pakistan's, as I mentioned before, GDP growth as compared to our competitor or peer countries in Asia remains low, on the lower side when we compare it with Malaysia, Korea, Indonesia, China, and Turkey and India. But Pakistan's projection was 4.2% in financial year 22. But what happened because of COVID, we are now expecting near 3 or slightly up on 3%. As I mentioned before, that our tax revenues, for obvious reasons, a couple of years will remain low. The debt burden went up because of COVID, and Pakistan borrowed, short-term and longer-term debt. Now that is where the investment gaps come in, and Pakistan has, a very good system of financing, scaling up, and impact, in terms of legal and also regulatory structure, which I'll highlight in the next slides. Next slide, please. Now that is just to give you a glimpse what's the thinking of the state. So Prime Minister Imran Khan's government has a lot of emphasis on rebuilding institutions, making growth inclusive, particularly reaching out to the lower end. We want to make our markets competitive, particularly our industrial sector. There's a lot of influence. He's a champion of green economy. And as I mentioned that, almost 68% of population is young. So the focus is on jobs for youth. Now, next slide. Now, very clearly, I'm not at all being a former, head of investment ministry. But let me explain as an independent person, when we look at Pakistan, it's a large market of 200 million people. It's being connected to almost 5 more countries, including Western China, Central Asia, and West Asia. And hopefully in future, Middle East and Eastern side of the neighborhood. High corporate profitability, it rose up to 39% on the stock market in 2019. We have a developed financial market and favorable investment regulation. And that is an important point, that there are market players who have the capability to manage and partner in investments. Highest increase in ease of doing business from 147 to 108, and I must give credit to the teams in Board of Investment who work day and night to achieve that. So that is where I would like to pitch Pakistan as a frontier market to reach out to investors. Next slide, please. So it's a liberal, as I said, investment regime, both at the legal protection side, but also regulatory side. Pakistan provides uniform treatment and incentives to all investors, be it foreign or bilateral. Pakistan is very, very, cautious of, no minimum investment requirements. Ownership structure of shareholding, barring 1 or 2 sectors, is open by up to 100%. You don't need a partner to enter the country. Pakistan allows 100% repatriation of profits and dividends. There are no restrictions on currency convertibility. And as I said, you can own the companies, you can partner the companies, you can exit. So it's a liberal well-regulated, decently, managed investment regime, which is now going to be connected, and it will be touching almost 700 million people in the region. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, this is from Standard Chartered, and they're just in one area of infrastructure, transport, water and sanitation, power and digital access. Pakistan offers over $96 billion worth of opportunities to investors. Next slide, please. And I think that's my last slide. So this is an important slide, which I would like to spend 1 minute on it. So as I said, on the regulatory and legal side, the public-private partnership frameworks are there. So we are the projects which, my colleague will be presenting after this. So there are options to investors. If you want to do individual investments in projects, Board of Investment will fully facilitate as one window and, play the facilitating role between the managers of the company and the investors. Option 2, which I would like to highlight because there are, world-class banking structure available, including foreign banks and local banks. 38 banks are in Pakistan. So I think it has a fantastic opportunity to float an SDG impact fund. It can be strategically partnered. Up to 25% equity can be chipped in through local institutions, and we can reach it to regional markets to cut down the risk factor. The third is, debt market is very well developed and instruments are traded on the stock market. So if we look at sectors like climate change, infrastructure, and technology, which are priority sectors, that is where there's an opportunity of very easily absorbing $500 million to $1 billion facility. So it's a flexible investment options country, opening doors to the people, and right from the top to the working level, people are quite keen to now bring in private sector investment for sustainable growth. I will close that, there are multiple options of risk mitigation, which I haven't talked about, but as the investor interest comes in, we can work about receivables, securitization, guarantees, and other instruments to minimize investor risk. So with that, I will stop here and pass on to the next speaker to explain, just to give a glimpse of projects which Pakistan can offer to investors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sharif. And if I could turn to Madam Farina Mazhar, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhattacharya, for giving me this opportunity to speak here today. I hope I'm audible and you can hear me. So I also want to thank the organizers for giving us this opportunity to present some of our projects on this SDG Investment Fair. So if you can put on the presentation, that I'll go through it within the given time, I hope so. Next slide, please. So the Federal Board of Investment was established with the mandate of promoting and facilitating both local and foreign investments in all sectors of the country. The objective is the speedy materialization of investment projects, enhancement of Pakistan's international competitiveness, and contribution to economic and social development. The wide range of services provided by Board of Investment also include providing information on the opportunities for investment and helping companies that are looking for joint ventures. Recently, the Board of Investment has also been assigned the task of supervising the regulatory reforms for creating the ease of doing business in the country. We are the regulators for setting up of the special economic zones in the country, and the Chairman Board of Investment is the convener of the Joint Working Group on Industrial Cooperation under CPAC. So Board of Investment acts as a focal point of contact between the investors and other government agencies and departments, both at the federal and the provincial level. Next, please. So several new reforms have been introduced for facilitating investors. A company can now be registered in Pakistan online within 24 hours. We also offer online e-visa facility for 174 countries. Pakistan Single Window Company has recently been launched as part of compliance with the Trade Facilitation Agreement of the World Trade Organization. Now, more than 60 government departments have been linked for getting necessary certifications online. This will result in speedy disposal of import and export transactions. Pakistan offers special tax and other incentives for projects related to technology, clean energy, and social sector, including housing and construction. In Pakistan, the government allows borrowing facility to investors from local as well as foreign banks. Next, please. The Board of Investment has a repository of over $14 billion SDG aligned projects in the sectors of transport and communication, energy including renewable energy, water supply and sanitation, education, healthcare, and information technology. For this fair, in consultation with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, United Nations Development Programme, relevant ministries and private sector companies, we are presenting a portfolio of 8 projects worth $3 billion in the sectors of transport and communication, innovative technology, and healthcare. It is important to highlight that Pakistan's financial regulatory structure is robust and facilitates priority sector investments through flexible support. Next, please. So this is a list of the projects which I will be presenting today, and I will discuss them one by one. Next, please. So the first project is the Sialkot Khania Rawalpindi Motorway Phase 1. This important toll road project of $290 million has been designed with a total length of 69 kilometers, connecting Pakistan's largest SME industrial cities. The basic design and commercial feasibility studies have been conducted. The project will be an extension of a 4-lane Lahore-Sialkot motorway, which is already operational for traffic. The Sialkot Khania project will further be extended up to Rawalpindi in the next phase. The project will reduce cost of doing business and increase commercial transport connectivity. This project will contribute to SDG 8, Decent Work and Economic Growth, SDG 9, Industry Innovation and Infrastructure, and SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. Industrial cities like Sialkot, Gujarat, and Wazirabad will get high-speed connectivity. Moreover, migration pressure to large cities will be reduced, and thousands of jobs related to 40 industries associated with the construction of road shall be created. Next, please. Regarding the indicative project structure, an SPV will be created for the execution of the project for the concessions period. The project is financially viable with equity IRR of 17% and the project IRR of 14%. There is also a possibility of guarantee by the government in the form of viability gap fund. The development partners and operators of the project are yet to be finalized. The construction is expected to be started by the first quarter of 2022. Next, please. So, Sialkot Khania Rawalpindi Motorway Phase 2. This is a $1.15 billion Phase 2 of Khania to Rawalpindi section of the project and is designed with a total length of 115 kilometers. The basic design and commercial feasibility studies are in progress. The project will be an extension of the 4-lane Sialkot Khania motorway, which is under procurement. Regarding the SDG impact, this project will contribute to SDG 8, Decent Work and Economic Growth, SDG 9, Industry Innovation and Infrastructure, and SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. This project will provide connectivity with underdeveloped and deprived areas. It will also reduce pressure on the urban migration. Thousands of jobs will be created allied with the 40 industries associated with the construction of road. Next, please. Regarding the indicative project structure, This project will also be executed through an SPV. The project is financially viable with an equity IRR of 17% and project IRR of 14%. As in phase 1, there is a possibility of guarantee by the government in the form of viability gap fund. Development partners and operators of this project are also yet to be finalized, and the construction is expected to start by the second quarter of 2022. Next slide, please. So the second project is 188 megawatt Naran hydropower project. A $431 million Naran dam and powerhouse have been proposed on the river stretch between Kaghan and Batakundi on Kunhar River. Naran is one of the most attractive tourist destinations in Pakistan, and the government is offering incentives to investors for developing domestic tourism. The dam site or Kunhar River is 12 kilometers upstream of major tourist city of Naran. The powerhouse is to be located on the left bank of Kunhar River, 11 kilometers downstream of Naran town. IFC has been appointed as the transaction manager for this KPK clean energy project. Regarding the SDG impact, this project will contribute to SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, and SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. Several new businesses will be generated along with the provision of low-cost clean energy. Large number of jobs will be created both during implementation and operation phases, along with reduction in carbon emissions. Next slide, please. Regarding the indicative project structure, an SPV will be created for the execution of the project for the concessions period. The project is financially viable with financial IRR of 7.05%. Development partners and operator of the projects are yet to be finalized, and the construction is expected to start by the second quarter of 2024. Next slide, please. So the third project is a 96 megawatt Batakundi hydropower project. The feasibility study indicates the project with a size of 96 megawatt having good economic rate of return with a cost of $188 million. This project is also located in the same district and will support tourism and local consumption. The Batakundi hydropower project is proposed to be located on Kunhar River, with its powerhouse located about 1 kilometer downstream of Batakundi village, which falls in the district Mansehra of KP province. IFC has been appointed as the transaction manager for this KPK clean energy project. Regarding the SDG impact, this project will contribute to SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, and SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. A number of new businesses will be generated along with the provision of low-cost clean energy, and a significant number of jobs will be created both during implementation and operation phases along with the reduction in carbon emission. Next, please. Regarding the indicative project structure, an SPV will be created for the execution of the project for the concessions period. The project is financially viable with financial IRR of 10.8%. Development partners and operators of the project are yet to be finalized, and the construction is expected to start by the fourth quarter of the year 2024. Next, please. The fourth project is regarding Medical Devices Development Center. Innovative Health Technologies is a public sector company established by National University of Science and Technology. It is currently producing low-cost treatment solutions for the patients suffering from heart diseases. The company is looking to expand and scale up operations. There is a business opportunity in producing ventilators, syringe pumps, dialysis machines, patient monitors, catheters, and immediate expansion of 3 to 10 projects, scaling up to 10 projects in the next 2 years. Regarding the SDG impact, this project will contribute to the SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 9, industry innovation and infrastructure, and SDG 10, reduced inequalities. The project will contribute to the availability of the cost-effective healthcare services in Pakistan, reduction in import bill, and job opportunities in the healthcare sector. It will also contribute to post-COVID healthcare provisions. If you could excuse me just for 30 seconds, it's time for break our fast. So we will just do that. Thank you. Regarding the indicative project structure, next slide, please. Regarding the indicative project structure, an SPV will be created for execution of the project. The estimated cost of the pilot project is $2.31 million. Project is financially viable with IRR of 7.1%. The project cost is just for the pilot program that will enable us to grow from 3 to 10 products at a limited time scale. Full scalability and return on investment can be discussed offline. Next slide, please. The fifth project is the silicon solar PV panel fabrication facility. Pakistan is importing more than 3,000 megawatts of photovoltaic solar panels per annum. A joint venture $19.2 million project is planned to meet the demand of photovoltaic panels, which is increasing exponentially. It is estimated that 2,900 gigawatt of electricity can be generated in Pakistan using daylight hours. Importing huge quantity of photovoltaic panels is consuming substantial amount of foreign exchange. Therefore, local manufacturing of photovoltaic panels is direly needed. Regarding the SDG impact, this project will contribute to SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, SDG 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, SDG 12, responsible production and consumption, and SDG 17, partnerships for the goals. The project will contribute towards affordable renewable energy, reduced carbon emissions, and climate change risk mitigation. Next slide, please. Regarding the indicative project structure, an SPV will be created for the execution of the project. Project is financially viable with an IRR of 12.2%. Development partners and operators of the project are yet to be finalized, and the project is expected to be completed by the second quarter of the year 2024. Next slide, please. The sixth project is the production of agricultural drones and 250 smart farms. Pakistan, which is an agricultural country, can greatly benefit from the drone technology for productivity enhancement by using cost-effective and efficient technology for farming. This project will allow on an average 10 times yield generation with efficient utilization of land. With drone technologies and sensors at smart farms, yield will increase with safer production and efficient utilization of resources. Regarding the SDG impact, this project will contribute to SDG 2, Zero Hunger, SDG 9, Industry Innovation and Infrastructure, and SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. We can achieve improved productivity in agricultural sector and contribute towards food security. This will also have direct impact on the rural poverty reduction through higher yields and job opportunities. Next slide, please. Regarding the indicative project structure, an SPV will be created for the execution of the project. The estimated cost of the project is $58 billion. The project is financially viable with financial IRR of 23.19%. The project is expected to be completed by the first quarter of the year 2023. Next, please. Project 7 is the NED Technology Park. A $56 million NED Inter-Regional Technology Park ITP will be the first fully integrated science and technology park of Pakistan and will be established under public-private partnership model. This initiative is aimed at redesigning the knowledge economy by stimulating and nurturing innovation-led germination and growth of high technology entities. Regarding the SDG impact, this project will contribute to SDG 4, quality education, SDG 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, and SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. It is anticipated that this project will create 200 new business opportunities, 4,000 new jobs with major contribution in productivity enhancement through technology. This platform will facilitate digital adoption through university-industry linkage. Next slide, please. Regarding the indicative project structure, an SPV will be created for the execution of the project. The project is financially viable with financial IRR of 15%. The project is to be implemented on public-private partnership mode. NED University and the private developer will sign the project, the PPP agreement, and the construction is expected to start by January 2022. Next slide, please. Project 8.
Madam, Mazhar, if we could ask you to speed up a little bit because we have to wind
this is the last project.
Okay, thank you.
This is the last project. Startup incubations across Pakistan. The National Incubation Center is a joint venture of Government of Pakistan and major corporate entities. NIC is currently running 5 startup facilities in all provinces of Pakistan. Each facility hosts 50 startup technology companies. With their remarkable contribution to youth employment and technology innovation, they have decided a major expansion for establishing innovation ecosystems and themed incubators across 20 locations in the country. The estimated cost of the project is $120 million. Regarding the SDG impact, this project will contribute to SDG 4, SDG 9, and SDG 17. These centers will continue incubating and supporting 500 startups per annum, promoting digital connectivity and innovation, creating 100,000 jobs across the span of the project through the companies. Next slide, please. Regarding the indicative project structure, an SPV will be created for the execution of the project. The project is financially viable with financial IRR of 14%. The project is expected to be completed by the fourth quarter of 2022. So that is the end of the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Mazhar. There's tremendous richness here, of course, but I'm acutely conscious we are very tight on time. So if I could go straight to the GISD representatives, starting with Mr. Joaquin Hugo from Citigroup. And if you could limit your remarks, I mean, of course, this is only a start of a discussion, but if you could limit your remarks to about a minute maximum too. Thank you.
Absolutely. Impressive array of projects, right? $1.5 billion, along the spectrum. I mean, I think it's as I said, an impressive amount of opportunity. I like to make a couple of comments in terms of strength of the PPAs for the hydro projects, which I think are key. And so if there's more time in the exchange, maybe the Pakistani delegation can relate to that a little bit. The strength of the PPAs, the entities, and the over time, how we're going to guarantee that these PPAs survive and have the right amount of tariff. And a second comment on the PV production and on the drones. which is, what's the idea of how do we make that compete against the very large technology advanced behemoths that are there in the industry? These are smaller projects compared. So, as I said, I mean, if there's time for the government of Pakistan to address that, that'd be great. But I'll stop there because I know we have very little time.
Thank you very much for your understanding. If I could go straight to Ms. Nadia Nikolaeva from Allianz.
Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. My questions predominantly are around the currency. Some of the IRRs you're showing range from double digits, but there's some that are in a single digit amount. And to the best of my understanding, the currency over the last 10 years has depreciated quite substantially, with some expectations for the depreciation in the future, which can completely wipe out some of those equity returns, so make them quite unattractive converted back to hard currency. So I wanted to better understand that aspect of how you, what are some of the mechanics you're using to give some comfort around the currency, especially given the substantial amount of foreign direct investments that you're going to have in the country over the coming decades. The second question I had was more around some of the infrastructure large projects. I saw there are some land acquisitions, and to the extent that those are going to be done pre-engagement with investors, I think that could be extremely helpful, and this is some of the best models we've seen so far in infrastructure, that we don't wait for some of the engagement with investors. There is no point engaging until the time some of those land acquisitions have been done. More generally, I think that is for the UN SDG investor platform. Quoting just SDGs is not entirely helpful to the investor universe. We need details on the impact indicators that are going to be available day one, as well as monitored over the life of the investments. I think that goes to all countries, and I think it should be part of the requirements of the investor platform as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nikolova. I will go next to Katharina Court from the Bank of America.
Hi, thank you very much for this excellent presentation, Haroon. I think so I would just say thank you also for Allianz to give some of the background. The Pakistan 10-year government bond is at the moment 10.3%. At least that's what I think it is. So if you have projects which yield less than that, like the medical center, I think that has to be relooked again. I think from a bank perspective, really, monitoring impact and SDGs is always very important. But there's one area where, quite frankly, I just have to speak openly here. Hydro projects, banks find very difficult, because we get a lot of pressure from interest groups to not support these because of the perceived, maybe wrongly perceived, environmental impact. And in order for those to be considered, not only need the land acquisition rights be clarified, but also impact studies need to be done upfront if they are actually considered as an positive impact for the region. I have to say I do like the idea of the self-sufficiency on solar panel generation. I think it's excellent. This is pretty much what you probably, Haroon, remember from the last meeting. What I think might be a good idea, and again, very direct and happy to take that offline, to find a good developer to do this in a joint venture who has already got the technology, where an additional funding can come in from a bank, or from Allianz. Because there you get the technology, you solve the issue, and you get direct transfer of support. So that would be my little summary, but happy to take anything offline if that's of help. Thank you, Haroon, and thank you, Amar.
Thank you. Last intervention from Grover Berkey from PIMCO, please.
Yes, hi, thank you. Great presentations and excellent comments from the other panelists here. And so I'll just add a little bit to what they've said. When it comes to the IRRs, what would be helpful to have a few, sort of an outline of a few of the key assumptions or other variables that going into those figures. Certainly critical to understand what an expected IRR is or can be to the points made. We would think about that in the context for most of the sovereign and comparing it to that. You could have projects that do yield below the sovereign if there are certain credit enhancements or characteristics that would warrant that. So understanding a little bit about the timeline that would go into that IRR, understanding any sort of features that were considered is certainly helpful, as well as I assume those were unlevered IRRs. One did note inequity in a project level, but some transparency about leverage or debt or what the capital structure is that goes into that figure. And then additionally, just to put all the projects in a bit of context, you could somewhat infer this by just the cost of the projects themselves, but a little bit of insight into what actual scale would be of each of these projects, whether that's on a revenue basis, whether that's on a jobs basis, whether that's on a profitability basis, just to help us think about comparing one versus the other and sort of what the ultimate intention would be for the footprint of each of these respective endeavors, but certainly a very interesting list of opportunities in the country.
Thank you all. I mean, this is clearly the start of a conversation. I thought the questions were, quite probing and interesting. I don't think we have the time to go into it in depth, but Haroon, if you wanted to, if you could just make some brief remarks on takeaways, and then I would like to turn to Ghana.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the interest, but more so is the honest and frank feedback. Couple of comments. Basically, in terms of renewable energy, the country has recently passed a new renewable energy policy, which is approved by the parliament, which gives the tariff structures and protection for future investors. So that covers there. Currency risk is a legitimate question, but over the past, 6 months, Pakistan's currency has appreciated against dollar by 20%. So volatility is both ways, but hedging mechanisms can be devised through a host of private financial sector partners, and also there are international multilateral guarantee arrangements who are keen to look at infrastructure related risk mitigation guarantees, including Guarantco of the UK. Now, in terms of the question on land acquisition, both the projects have acquired the land. I understand the sensitivities on hydropower, but at the same time, International Finance Corporation, as indicated, are the transaction manager, and they'll be happy to give all the details. Final two comments. Yes, I totally agree that we need, not only impact indicators to be well tailored and tracked and monitored. And that's where this partnership will help actually how to develop that, because this is the first kind of experience. In terms of solar panels, yes, I know there is an interest, but already we have the local partner who will put in up to, the majority of the equity, and we are looking for a partner who comes and joins. And finally, the question on more details on capital structure. In this limited time, it was not possible. That's all available. And what I will request, UNDP and DESA teams are to work with Board of Investment and myself so that we can actually give a 2-pager on each project, which actually gives, some details which answers these queries. I will close on that just with a note that there is a full support of Government of Pakistan at the Prime Minister's level to open up this field. Private sector has the capability, and Pakistan is open to, as I said, any flexible mode of investment partnership with private sector, as long as it makes economic and commercial sense to both parties. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sharif, and thank you and everybody on your side for the richness of that presentation. I hope it leads to a lot of fruits. So, great appreciation. And I hope that this can be, as I said, a start of a productive dialogue. So with that, let me welcome the speakers of the first part, which is through a video message, and that is His Excellency Ken Ofori Atta, Minister of Finance of Ghana. I had the pleasure to listen to him yesterday. Mr. Yofi Grand from the Ghana Investment and Promotion Center, Mr. Charles Paul Abani, the UN Resident Coordinator. So if we could maybe have the video message, please.
It's a pleasure to be here with you. More than a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, the scale of the tragedy is unprecedented. African economies were pushed into construction by an estimated 2 to 5.4% of their GDP, while fiscal positions deteriorated and average debt to GDP levels hovered around 70% for some countries. Indeed, our collective responses to recovering from the pandemic will be the defining choices of our age. Africa stands to lose a decade. The government of Ghana recognizes that we must rebuild and promote the building blocks for an inclusive and sustainable recovery. Our focus remains to move urgently toward opportunities and solutions that achieve sustainable and broad-based economic growth without harming our climate or leaving hundreds of millions of families in poverty. Ghana's green growth will be anchored across several key systemic transformations in energy, public health, infrastructure, transportation, and housing, to name a few. Accordingly, our ambitious 2021 to 2024 100 billion Ghana Cares Obatampa Economic and Social Transformation Program outlines various policy actions that align national incentives towards addressing our existing infrastructure gap to accelerate our recovery and structural transformation. Ghana intends to position itself as a compelling destination for private capital seeking rewarding growth investments. We expect to record average GDP growth 5% over the medium term from our COVID-19 achievement of 0.9%. Mobilizing private finance and investment remains central to our development agenda and attaining the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. As we go through our country presentation, I urge all of us to think boldly and creatively. Our drive for building back better must not be held back by a poverty of ambition. Now is the time for us to join hands and lay the foundation for a robust and irreversible sustainable recovery. Let us not waste this crisis.
In Ghana, we have a very strong link between achievement of the SDGs and FDI. Indeed, we are at a place where we need to define sustainable finance in our economy, recognizing that many of our developing countries do have challenges in attracting foreign direct investment. But we are ensuring that our foreign direct investment is both responsible, ethical, and will lead us to achieve SDGs. And even as we go ahead and talk about a Ghana Beyond Aid, we clearly also articulate the opportunity for partnerships and linkages. And as we've moved into active mode on the African Continental Free Trade Area, this is very important to us because it's just not only investing for commercial profit, but investing for growth and development. And in that sphere, we emphasize and highlight sustainable finance as well as ethical finance. And we also clearly focus on impact financing, such that whatever we finance has impact, but will lead to the achievement of the SDGs. And that is what at GIPC we are focusing on. We are focusing on sustainable finance, we are focusing on partnerships, but we are also focusing on ethical standards. And therefore, we've become the champion of what we call the responsible sustainable investor, where we are advocating that investors, foreign direct investors, who partner with local indigenous investors and the local economy, but also enable us achieve the SDGs or rapid achievement or accelerated achievement of the SDGs, are the ones that should benefit from incentives. And so we are very happy to partner with foreign direct investments to achieving the SDGs, and we believe that that linkage is extremely strong, and that is what in future will be a major driving force in many economies across the world, especially in the developing economies.
The context of COVID-19 has thrown up new challenges for countries as they seek to recover and build forward confidently towards achieving the 2030 agenda. Moving from funding to financing and investments is a key plank upon which economic recovery, green growth, mobility, and equality will be achieved. Ghana has a bold ambition, clear plans, and committed leadership. The SDG Investment Fair is a great platform for Ghana to present its offerings and to find finance, especially from the private sector, to fuel this agenda. We thank UNOPS and DESA for the work that they have done to support Ghana to bring forward this excellent suite of opportunities. The UN SDG project as well here in Ghana is supporting this financing agenda through, for instance, the Sustainable Infrastructure Finance Tool from UNOPS, the Investor Maps and Investor Platform from UNDP, the Sustainable Basic Sanitation Fund from UNICEF, and a host of other innovative financing mechanisms from UNCDF and WHO. Ghana is open for business and investments. The UN in Ghana stands with Ghanaians as they strive towards a future built on partnerships and grounded in a solid vision of self-reliance. We wish Ghana success at today's SDG Investment Fair as they work forward and hard to achieve the 2030 agenda.
So if I could call on David Collision, he is the Director of Public Investment and Assets Division in the Ministry of Finance. At the technical side, we also have with us Godwin Gadikor, the technical representative from the Ministry of Railway Development. Mr. Collision, if I could turn to you to make the presentation.
Thank you very much. Ghana rising sustainable infrastructure post-COVID-19. Your Excellencies, on behalf of the government of Ghana, you are welcome to the country presentation on infrastructure for investments. Next slide, please. A lot of investment potential exists in Ghana for growth. Ghana's GDP growth rate is ranked 89th in the world and 18th in Africa, and is expected to grow at 5% in 2021, despite the impacts of COVID-19. Ghana also has an investor-friendly regulatory environment, which enables growing foreign direct investments to reach $2.65 billion in 2019. Other key economic indicators include GDP of $66.5 billion and a GDP per capita of $2,190 as at end 2020. Next slide, please. Ghana has a 50-year infrastructure plan which sets the benchmark for the attainment of the SDGs. The plan seeks to build world-class resilient infrastructure by 2047 to support Ghana's continued growth and improve the quality of life of all Ghanaians. An estimated $37.9 billion is required annually to fund Ghana's infrastructure needs by 2047. Foreign direct investment can help meet this investment need. Next slide, please. Ghana has placed infrastructure at the center of its national development objectives. Implementing the Ghana Infrastructure Plan and achieving the SDGs are one and the same. Infrastructure can influence 92% of the 169 SDG targets across all 17 goals. Infrastructure also plays a critical role in tackling climate change. Climate-proof infrastructure, for instance, is central to Ghana's national determined contributions in line with its commitment to tackle global climate change. Gender mainstreaming into infrastructure financing are also adapted in Ghana based on the national gender policy. Next slide, please. Ghana has a clear vision and strategy for the development of infrastructure in some key sectors. The transportation sector focuses on roads, rail networks, ports and harbors, inland water transport, aviation system, whilst the energy sector focuses on renewable energy, electricity, and oil and gas. Next slide. The brochure contains a comprehensive list of projects for this fair with the relevant information such as project description, location, sector, subsector, start date, and impacts towards the SDGs, Paris commitments, and gender outcomes. Next slide, please. There are 16 projects in all, 3 at feasibility, 4 at pre-feasibility stage, 9 at concept stage. We have 2 priority projects for the purposes of this fair, and then the 14 other projects at early stage. Next slide. Yeah. Shown on the screen is the list of projects from various sectors. The first 2 are priority projects, and the remaining are early stage projects. More details will be provided on the 2 priority projects in subsequent slides. However, I would like to give highlights. I would like to highlight the other early stage projects. The first one is the Trans-ECOWAS Railway Line, establishment of a home-based carrier, Volta Lake Transport System, Airport City 2, Tamale Airport MRO Facility, Air Cargo Facility, Ghana Nuclear Power Plants, Green Airports, Petroleum Hub, Plastic Waste Recycling, Hostel for Education Institutions, Affordable Housing Projects, Ebri Botanical Gardens Agreed, and then the Keita Seaport. Next slide. I'll now delve into the 2 priority projects. And like I said earlier on, they are at feasibility stage. So we'll start with the first one, which is the Metro Light Rail Transit System. The light rail transit network is composed of 7 corridors located in Kumasi, Ghana's second largest city. Kumasi is a converging point of commercial activity and a key transportation hub. Its economic progress and rapid urbanization have led to urban mobility challenges and traffic congestions, which inhibit the city's socio-economic growth. The Kumasi Light Rail Transit System aims to strengthen the city's transportation system. The project is expected to start in 2023, with operations starting in 2026. The capital expenditure requirements is estimated at $5.8 billion and operation and maintenance at $137 million. The agency responsible is the Ministry of Railways Development. Other investment details are the fact that the project is being structured as a public-private partnership arrangement, preferably a build, operate, and transfer structure. And we are looking at an SPV that would have 70% debt and 30% equity. And the concession period is 30 years. The net present value estimated is around $404 million, and the financial IRR is 15.6%, and a benefit cost ratio of 1.12. The project will impact SDGs 3, 7, and 11, as illustrated in the slide. It can lead to inexpensive and safe form of transport, reducing traffic jam and deaths due to traffic incidents. It can also reduce CO2 emissions from vehicles and enhance satisfaction with public transport safety, affordability, reliability, and frequency. Scaling up sustainable mass transportation and resilient infrastructure planning for improved movement can also impact on the Paris commitments. To also build resilience for gender through equal employment opportunities in construction and operation and maintenance. Accessible transport options enable women to participate in public life and other activities, hence impacting gender outcomes. Next slide, please. The second priority project is the Central Spine Railway Line. The Central Spine Rail Line originates from the Central District of the city of Kumasi and routes through major cities and towns as Mankransu, Bechem, Sunyani, Techimang, Kintampo, Buepe, Tamale, Wale, Bogatanga, and Navrongo before terminating in Paga near the Burkina Faso border. The approximate length of the Central Spine Line is 672 kilometers. The project is expected to link Ghana to Burkina Faso and open up economic development. It is expected to start in 2023 and operation start date is 2029. The capital expenditure requirement for this project is in the region of $3.3 billion US, and operation and maintenance estimated at $123 million. The Ministry of Railways Development is the agency responsible for the project. Other investment details are the fact that this project is looking at a build, operate, and transfer structure, and the financing is from both debt and equity, and the concession period is also 30 years.
Mr. Collision, just wanted to say, Mr. Collision,
945.
If I could just say that since we want to, give the opportunity to the investors also to respond to you, could you perhaps speed up the presentation? We need to finish.
I'm almost,
okay. All right.
Almost done. Yeah. So next slide, improving business climate. There are a number of legislations that are in place to boost the business climate. The first one is the Public Financial Management, Public Investment Management Regulations, which deals with the legal, regulatory, and institutional framework for public investments. We have the Public-Private Partnership Act 2020, Act 1039, and also the Ghana Investment Promotion Center Act and the Ghana Infrastructure Investments Act. When it comes to ease of doing business, we are ranked 118 in the world and third in West Africa. And when it comes to the World Bank thematic scores for public-private partnerships, in terms of project preparation, 48%, contract management 51%, procurement 61%, and unsolicited proposals 67%. It is expected that we'll improve upon these scores after coming into force of the PPP Act, which would streamline a lot of our processes. We have a simple investment roadmap. We start with registration with the Registrar General's Department, and then the second step is the minimum equity contribution, which has to be met, and the third is the registration of Ghana registration with the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, which can be found in the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the next slide shows the 3 steps I talked about, simple steps that we can follow: registration with the Registrar General's Department, meeting the minimum equity contribution, and then registration with the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the UN agencies, the ministries, departments, and agencies, and all who contributed to make this presentation possible, and whoever contributed for us to make this presentation at this fair. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Collision, and apologize for rushing you. It's an extremely rich, informative presentation. I just want to give time for our colleagues from GISD to be able to share some of their reactions. If I could begin with Mr. Peter Sullivan, the Managing Director of Public Sector, Head of Africa City.
Thank you, Amar, and thank you to the Ghana team. And first, let me commend the Ghana government, in providing its leadership around the SDGs, and certainly about taking that as a major focus for the National Development Plan going forward. Maybe just 2 comments around the highlighted projects. One, if you could maybe expand upon the role that the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund might play in the priority projects, and how critical they may be within the capital structure of any of the projected priority projects. Secondly, is the government prepared to make availability payments in support of the rail projects, particularly in the early years of the operational phases? And then maybe just thirdly, I know you identified a number of the SDGs that would be impacted by these projects, but from the government's expectation, is the private sector sponsor for the projects responsible for monitoring, measuring the KPIs that would be associated on the delivery of those SDGs, and then ultimately a disclosure? Or would that be a joint effort in conjunction with the government of Ghana? Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. If I could go to Ms. Nikolova from Allianz.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Really wonderful to see such large-scale infrastructure projects coming from Ghana. Of course, these are not the first one. We've seen plenty having come already. And one of the things that struck me was around the percentage of unsolicited projects. I think a lot more transparency would be welcome as to how those projects are essentially contracted and how they are made to happen. The other aspect, and this is something that we have spoken to with the other countries, is around Ghana has established capital markets. It has increasing round of local institutional investors. To what extent and how are these investors going to be incentivized to participate alongside international investors into some of these large-scale infrastructure projects? We find a better alignment of interest when we see local investors also participating. So these will be the two questions from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nikolova. Last, if I could turn to Mr. Grover Berthy from PIMCO.
Yes, hi. Great presentation. Like the focus on the two specific projects. A few suggestions or ideas for the Trans project specifically. One time compelling objective of a project like this is hopefully some multiplier effects, some knock-on effects. In the States, one thing we focus on the transit-oriented development and ability for a project like this to hopefully have improvement attributes for whether it be residential housing, whether it be commercial real estate, whether it be other sort of facilities that can then develop around this and trying to either protect the land or facilitate the investment in adjacent properties and land. And that's not going to be necessarily directly captured in IRRs for this project itself, but it's a very critical factor when thinking about approving a project like this, which can take significant time to develop, and oftentimes transit projects do result in full operations and maintenance and overhead over time, and so it's a great area effect. So that's one recommendation. And then similarly, I think it would be helpful to I like the investment details here and the details on the SDGs. I think it would be interesting to try to give a little bit more color when it comes to the SDGs in terms of any sort of over time that would be provided, or just more clarity around how those would be measured beyond the initial project phase or the initial financial phase. Very much appreciate the content here.
Thank you. I believe that we have some questions from Pakistan and from Guatemala. I don't think, given the hour, we will have the time to actually delve into them. But given that this is a dialogue, I think it's important to hear the questions. So if I could ask the representatives from Guatemala and the representative of Pakistan, and then I'll wrap up with the speaker from the closing remark from Ghana. So could I invite the representative from Guatemala, please? I don't have the representative, but maybe if I could just read the question. So it's from Guatemala. It's very interesting to know more about your experience, especially regarding access to finance for sustainable infrastructure. Therefore, I would like to ask the following question. From your point of view, how can developing countries navigate the ecosystem of infrastructure financing to gain access to available initiatives and mechanisms? This is an issue that came up yesterday as well. And from Pakistan, what are the major challenges in the management of infrastructure projects? What innovative mechanisms, in your experience, have potential to unlock capital for viable infrastructure projects? What are the opportunities to tackle and address financing gap infrastructure? What are the viable options for connecting governments with private investors to address infrastructure needs. This is again something that came up yesterday. I don't think we have the time to go into those questions. They are very important ones. I'm sure they will be part of the continuing dialogue. If I could close out the meeting by asking Ms. Marian Tapapka, former Chief Director of the Ministry of Planning, for any closing remarks on the Ghanaian side. And you have the floor, Ms. Tapapka.
Thank you very much, Amma. I know this is, we don't have too much time here. I'll just say one statement and then possibly give the floor back to Mr. Collison to, give some quick responses to the questions that were raised by the investors. But just to say that, really government of Ghana is really keen, and that mobilizing private investment and financing is central to our transformational agenda. And we are very cognizant of the appetite for infrastructure development in Africa among global investors, and we welcome investments that will complement our efforts in addressing infrastructure gaps, and as we move in and improve the ease of doing business in Ghana. And just to say that tomorrow we have a side event, which is from 7:30 to 8:45 a.m. And I'd like to invite everyone to that side event. It will focus a bit more in detail on the presentations that we have made today. So I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Collison, if he's there, to quickly just give a response to one or two of the questions that were raised. Mr. Collison, you have the floor.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Please go ahead.
With respect to the role of the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund in the priority projects, what I'd like to say is that per our PPP law, we are supposed to do competitive tendering processes. And so these projects will be put out there. GIF would only come in as a fallback position if we are not able to succeed. And GIF is also available for investors to approach to also get them to fund projects either with equity or debt. In terms of availability payments for projects such as this, especially at the early stage, such as using construction grants, etc. These are things that are enshrined in the PPP law. Government is amenable to providing some support to its PPP projects. But like the law says, we can only provide up to 30% capital grants. We can also go up to 50%, but that would be with the approval of the Minister for Finance. And then with the unsolicited proposals, like I said, with the new PPP law, what the PPP law, the direction it's given is that we'll be doing more competitive procurement processes, and so the law makes it so stringent for unsolicited proposals to be entertained. And then when we go to the incentives for private sector, we have a number of incentives, and I believe investors can contact the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, who would give them all the advice. There are contact numbers on their website which you can use to get information on the incentives, but there are tax incentives and various incentives depending on the sector that you want to invest in. And then the multiplier effect, yes, there will be multiplier effects for projects such as this. And then how SDGs will be measured in future. Yes, a part of our planning process, the measurement will be done at various levels, at sector, national levels. And then because they are PPP projects, they are output specified. And so the contracts would have those output specifications, those KPIs that the SPV or the project company needs to meet would be put in there. Those that government has to do would also be taken care of. I think I'll end here, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Collison, and thank you for the quality of that presentation. As we have seen from both the Ghana and the Pakistan presentations, the exercise of pulling together both the framework within which each country is pursuing its development agenda and also the specificity of projects is really very valuable in being able to communicate about strategy and opportunities with the private sector. This is clearly the start of a conversation and dialogue. And of course, I look forward to my UN colleagues in finding ways in both in country and in the UN headquarters in deepening the process. So thank you again very much for everybody for participating. I'm sorry that we did not have as much time as we would have liked, but nevertheless, I thought this was a very valuable and very, very exciting initiative. So thank you, everybody, and all the best to Ghana and to Pakistan.